You're listening to the Snob OS podcast, the podcast for Apple snobs. Hey, this is Nica Montford, aka Tech Savvy Diva.
Yo, this is Terrance Gaines, aka Brother Tech.
And welcome to the Snob OS Show, the show for Apple snobs, where we talk all things Apple and then some. Welcome back, everybody, to this week's episode of the show. We definitely want to thank you for tuning in and supporting the show. If you can, for me, you can definitely take a listen or watch of this show over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Also, after you take a listen, hit the little rate and review button and leave us a comment or just a 5-star review. We'd definitely appreciate it. Also, we do have some exclusive content available and access to watch the show live. If you are one of our snobbists, which are our Patreon supporters, you can head on over to patreon.com/snobOScast to sign up and to get all of those details. And with that, we're going to go ahead and jump into this week's show. We're going to kick it off with the lowdown where we talk all things Apple. First up, Apple Music turns 10. And in celebration of this 10th year of Apple Music, I have to say I'm a little bit surprised that Apple has really kind of gone out in this celebration. So first off, I think this was like earlier this week, maybe Monday. And they started off by doing some special programming on Apple Music with different artists. They had some live broadcasts with some pretty popular hosts, Zane Lowe, Ebro Darden, and what they're doing in these live broadcasts are counting down the top 500 most streamed songs over the past decade. That seems to be a bit excessive, but hey, this is what they are choosing to do in celebration. The other thing that they're also doing is launching a new studio, and they are opening this, like I said, the state-of-art studio, 15,000 square feet, which is pretty big, and it has radio stations, a sound stage, spatial audio room that does some mixing, and content creation facilities that are designed specifically for artists. So like I said, they are really kind of kicking it up a notch. And the final thing that they're doing in celebration is they've created this feature called Replay All Time, which basically a social version of Apple Music where they allow you, if you're a subscriber, to see and stream the most played songs from your entire Apple Music history. So if you've been there all 10 years, you can go back and see what you've listened to most. You've been there 5 years, whatever the case may be. That's why they're calling it Replay All Time. You're able to do a countdown of your most played music album songs or whatever since you individually have had Apple Music. So, like I said, I'm a bit surprised that they kind of went all out for Apple Music like this.
Well, it makes sense. Apple Music is one of their mainstays as far as apps are concerned. I think Apple Music was the first time Apple, I'm guessing here, but it's one of the first things Apple did in the cloud, outside of iTunes, outside of Apple ID, stuff like that. It's like a popular app that most people must have when they buy or upgrade their phone. So I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised that Apple's doing a celebration. I'm curious as to what they're going to do with this ecosystem studio thing. Is it just for, I know what they said it's going to be for, but is this going to be to the public, open to the public? Like if I was just in the area and I wanted to book like a music listening session, or if I was an artist and I wanted to have a, what do you call it? Music album listening party. Is that what they call them?
Yeah.
Could I just as a artist book that, or do I got to be connected, or is this just Apple doing this and they're going to bring in the events and they're going to do the activations or the events on their end, or is this going to be like open to the public? I'm curious to see, how they're going to do that because it has pretty nice a 4,000
Yeah.
square foot soundstage, spatial audio mixing room, photo and social media lab and edit room, isolation booths for songwriting. Is this for like artists that just want to book the Apple Music Studio, or is this like something that Apple's going to do and this is going to be the space that they host these events in?
Yeah, because they say it's for content creation as well. And I think a little further because I actually saw this in Apple's newsroom, which are their press releases. And apparently they're going to do, there's an expansion plan for this where they're going to do this and, not just in California, but they're going to do it in other cities as well. So it's interesting to see how they're going to navigate this. Like you said, can you just like sign up to like, hey, I want to book a session, like just anybody, or do you have to be somebody? So it's going to be interesting to see how they're going to use this. And of course, Apple Park is up in Cupertino, which is Northern California. This studio is actually in LA, which is a couple hours away. So it's not actually on the Apple Park premises. So it's going to be interesting to see. It's a 3-story building. So
Yep. So
it's
I'm scrolling through my all play replay. It's all right. Most of it is music that I have on repeat, like specifically my exercise playlist. So a lot of the songs that I listen to when I exercise are showing up there. But for the most part, I agree with it. I would have assumed that there'd be some more like old school, but most of my music looks like it is 2000 on. Maybe this goes along with being on iTunes and then that evolving into Apple Music. So that's when I think that's where this is pulling from. Yeah, I listen to old school music, but it's not as often apparently as the music on my exercise playlist. So, and I've got some weird things on here, but I am in agreement with the gist of my all-time music that I've listened to over the past 10 years.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm looking at mine. I have this like a meditation playlist that I play every morning, and that's like at the top. So, kind of have it to scroll through a little bit to see what else is there. But it's pretty much what do they call it? I don't want to say own brand. That's not the word I'm looking for, but similar to that. So
Okay.
hey, cool. Check it out and let us know if your playlist is actually your all-time playlist is matching up with what you would expect after however long you've had Apple Music. Okay, the next thing is going to be a little bit about Apple Intelligence. So we know that Apple has had issues with the implementation of Apple Intelligence, and we've talked about it when we covered the WWDC announcement. What did this mean for Siri? Because they really didn't talk about Siri in the announcement. And I guess it's because they don't know what they're going to do with Apple Intelligence, so they can't really do too much with Siri if they don't know what direction they're going to go in with Apple Intelligence. So apparently, Apple is like, hey, if you can't beat them, join them. They are considering using OpenAI and Anthropic to power Siri. So what they've done is they have given OpenAI and Anthropic access to their cloud infrastructure to run versions of their model. So it's kind of like a preview, a little test run, if you will, to see how well both of these companies' products, Claude and ChatGPT, will work in the Apple ecosystem. So it's one of those things where I don't think they will use both of these to power Siri. I think they'll pick one And this is kind of like a test run to see what their trained models do with Siri and how it works. I think it's smart for them to kind of test it out to see what it looks like. But it looks like this is a potential avenue. And I guess, like I said, if you can't beat them, join them. It's one of those things where if you can't figure it out and someone else has, see if it integrates and works with what you got going on.
I'm hoping this doesn't signify Apple throwing in the towel on artificial intelligence, specifically Siri artificial intelligence, the way they envisioned it and the way they presented it to us. That was very appealing to me, that it would all be on device and would be learning the model that I have given it, Apple, over the years and years and years and years of all this ecosystem usage. I would be like, oh, cool. I've already got a quote unquote LLM that has learned me. And now I just need Apple to figure out how to harness that to help me out. Right.
You already have the data set. You already have the data.
Right. Right. My guess is they couldn't do it. I think the on device thing was the linchpin. Not only did they want it to run on device solely or completely, they also was concerned about privacy and data security. When you are training an LLM, you are giving up some privacy in order to train the LLM, right? So my whole thing was, all right, fine. That's the compromise. I'll take it. But on the condition that it is not, shared with the world, and Apple isn't using my data to train for other people, right? I just wanted to train for me, right? Yeah. I think Apple wanted to do that, ran into a bunch of roadblocks. I think the power was the main roadblock, because not everybody has the same phone. Even though I bought the same phone, my configurations, my setup, my storage, my processing power differs based on how I use the phone. So use the phone. I don't think Apple could account for that, right? They couldn't one for one everybody's experience, right? So I think that's where they ran into some issues. Anthropic and OpenAI, they don't have those problems. They are in the cloud. They pull from the cloud. They upload to the cloud. You download from the cloud. They scrape all the information from the internet. They train all the models. Everything is in the cloud. So Apple's like, all right, well, we can't do it on device. Let's invite or cooperate or collaborate with some of the top end popular ones, being OpenAI and Anthropic, to power its updated version of Siri, which runs on Apple's cloud infrastructure. So what I'm hoping Apple is going to do is, while we work on perfecting the on-device part, we're going to allow Anthropic and OpenAI to utilize their cloud infrastructure, lock it down as much as we can, and that be the duet, right? If I want to, and Apple's going that way now. It's like, well, if you want on-device processing, natural language, this and that and third, you can do it on the device. The second you need to go to the cloud to pull down, upload, learn, whatever the case may be, you can pick these two. And Apple's kind of doing it. They just need to get their part down packed first, not first, but it needs to be as equal, as important as OpenAI and or Anthropic, because what Apple doesn't want to happen is they push this out to the public and everybody's like, oh, I love OpenAI and I love Anthropic. Meanwhile, Siri sitting over here shrinking and dying and judging, right? So I don't think Apple wants that, but they're in a predicament. It's like, do you stick to your guns, or do you give up and, like you said, join them?
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see how it works, because, like you said, it's one of those things where they've been at this for a minute. They've had to push it back after it was announced, and it looks like they're struggling. They're trying to figure out how to make it work. They're trying to figure out what type of concessions I think they can make when it comes to really relinquishing some of their power and their control over the data.
And the promise that they're going to keep it secure.
They're going to keep it secure.
Right.
And also the the almost bloodlust, the bloodthirst for everybody to have AI and
Jesus
everything.
Christ, man.
And it's like
Everything
they're
all over the
competing with
place.
that. Yeah. So it's like it has to be hard to make those decisions, and them opening it up to probably the two biggest providers to say, hey, we're going to invite you in. It's going to be a lot. You're going to be testing this inside of our infrastructure, and we'll see how it works. So I think this is the latest attempt to try and even figure this thing out and see how it's going to work, if it's going to work, what they can do to kind of stick to the Apple ethos while, satisfying the customer need to have AI and everything. So I guess we'll see what happens when this thing is finally released, or they have something that they are willing, to release that is actually actually good. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on, and I'm sure we'll be seeing the product or the end result of these tests and these conversations. So we'll see how it works and see if they can figure it out. And all I can say is best of luck, because this is some really hard stuff. And good luck. All right. The next thing, technology for good. I guess this can be considered. I guess it depends on where you sit in this. But there is this new app called ICEBlock. It was created. It's an iPhone, iOS only app. It's only on iPhone, and the guy who created it around the time that all the ICE raids were happening in LA. Well, this app allows the user to anonymously report sightings of ICE agents. So think of, your Waze or your Google Maps. If you see an accident, you can do the pen and say, hey, cops over here, or speed traps. It's kind of that premise, but with ICE. And, it wasn't that, I guess, well known until the U.S. Attorney General made some remarks complaining about CNN talking about it. Mm-hmm. And so she goes on this rant. There's been so many things she said, so many things that the Secretary of DHS has said. They're going to come after, the person who created, going to come after CNN for doing this. And what they've done is make a relatively obscure app a viral sensation overnight. It skyrocketed to the top spot, one of the top spots on the Apple App Store and in the rankings. So you have this app that has about 20,000 users that was basically mostly, in a localized city. Now, because they go in and go on their rants and raving or whatever, now everybody knows about this. It's highly rated on the App Store. It's at the very top, and people are using it quite a bit. I think the latest story I heard that was using it was somewhere in Florida. But yeah, it's lawful. And they normally, I think they're saying, I'm reading an article from TechCrunch, they're saying that it's in with a 5-mile radius of the location that you can, set this up. You can do notifications. So I guess if you're in a certain area, it'll let you know if people are around. And one thing that TechCrunch made sure to note is it says that the app does not collect or store any user data. And so they kind of did their due diligence to say, hey, no one is collecting any information. No one is storing it so they can share it later. This is simply, let me let you know if people are around who could potentially cause you harm or cause issue with you.
That's what they get. This is a free market
Yep.
society.
For now.
So for now, so this guy deciding to create this app to be a part of the solution instead of part of the problem. I think we can, most people can or agree with the fact that how the government is handling these immigration policies is whack. I think most of us can agree with that.
Yeah.
And instead of just complaining about it, like most of us do on social media,
Yeah.
he decided to create an app to do something about it. And like you mentioned, it would have been just a regular old app until the attorney general decided to bring it up and say, oh, we're watching you, which is so hypocritical. She says, he's giving a message to criminals where our federal officers are. I'm like, that ain't nothing new. And
And
he
they're in
cannot do
public.
that. Right. And he said, and she said, and he cannot do that. What law, what rule says I can't create an app to
Do anything.
journal where police are? It's like, come on, man. So she says he cannot do that, and we're looking at it. What does that mean? And we're looking at it, and we are looking at him. What does that mean? And he better watch out, because that's not protected speech. He never said it was protected speech. That is threatening the lives of our law enforcement officers throughout
He
this
say
country.
anything.
He didn't say nothing about the officers. He's put disclaimers in the app that says, please don't incite violence. Please don't use this for any. So he's checking all the boxes.
He's done his due diligence for him.
And it's just amazing. This is just another example of how this current administration and people who think like this think rules to, or think actions to displace people from their families, to pull them from this country and just drop them off wherever is okay. But when people start to fight back about it, or to push back on it, oh, the American democracy, it's like, come on, man, y'all set up the game.
You started,
and now y'all mad we playing.
Right. It's like, no, you're just supposed to do exactly what we say and not do anything. And it's like, one rule for me, not for thee. Right. I can do all these things. I can, disregard the law and what's right. But you can't. You can't do it.
It's crazy.
It's insane. But good for him. I just hope that he is safe and protected, and that he is,
I wouldn't do no interviews. I wouldn't have interviewed. I'd have tried to, as much as I could, hide who I am via the app developer. You got to disclose who, where the app comes from. Yeah. I would have figured out how to have a shell company on top of a shell company. I ain't doing no interviews. We about to run this thing, so I don't need those extra problems. But I do want to be a part of the solution. So I'm going to use the American laws. I'm going to use the American system against itself.
Yeah. And so the only thing I think I saw a couple articles about this, and I read one on Engadget, and they did interview him. They did say his name in the article. And I'm wondering, because all of these big tech guys has met this administration, they were at the inauguration, is he going to try and lean on Tim Cook, who is the CEO of Apple, and
Trump?
force him to remove the app from the App Store, and kind of throw his weight around, because he's been known to do that. He's been doing that.
I don't know. It would make sense. That's plausible. That since they kind of cozied up to him during the first 100 days or whatever that is, I could see him trying it. But Apple, I don't put nothing past nobody, but Apple has been pretty mum's the word when it comes to giving up people's information at the request of anybody. There was a controversial story back in the day to where these people did some heinous act, and the government or whomever wanted to get their Apple ID information, and Apple was like,
"Oh, the San Bernardino stuff."
Yeah. So I don't see them. I don't say they ain't gonna do it, but times have changed. Maybe Apple has changed, but for them to fight that hard against that San Bernardino case, you got to go Google it. I don't see them easily just turning this over and selling this guy out because the administration leaned on him. Now, again, I don't know, because profits over everything.
Yeah. The
I'm
threat
hoping
of
that's not the
adding
case.
tariffs. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't
Right,
know. That's kind
right.
of been
Yeah.
their go-to. And I think there's what Paramount, they are settling a suit with him
Hmm.
because he got mad about the Kamala Harris interview. And so in order, because they are trying to do some sort of sale, so in order to get that approved, they are selling the case, and they're basically giving in, and they're giving him like $16 million to his library or something. And it's not because they did anything wrong, but they need the FCC to approve something, and they know that if they don't acquiesce, then that's going to hold up the sale of whatever they're doing. So that's why I mentioned that. I don't know what type of stuff he may have on people or ways he can retaliate towards them that force them to cave. And, if Apple's just going to say, what, it's just easier just to pull the app from the app store than to have all these headaches. I hope they don't. But I mean, at this stage, I don't put anything past any of these companies when it comes to this person and his antics and his tantrums. So I don't know. I hope not. I hope Apple chooses to be on the right side of history for this. But like you said, business, money, profits over everything. So I guess we'll see probably in the next week or so if anything happens on the corporate side of things. But I mean, this is what you get for getting up there, running your mouth. You done ran it up for this guy and this app. So good luck from, changing things up now. So yeah, sucks for you. All right, that's gonna wrap it up for the lowdown. Let's head on over to Second String, where we talk all other tech. I don't know what your boy Mark Zuckerberg is up to, but he has basically created what they're calling a new like Meta Superintelligence team, and it's under the heading of Meta Superintelligence Labs. And what makes this so unique is Mark Zuckerberg and team basically went and poached all of the top talent from OpenAI, from Anthropic, from Google, and investing $14.3 billion to scale up the Superintelligence Lab. I don't know how true it is, but I saw somewhere that the top people on this super team, they offer them something like $300 million or something, like insane.
You said they offered themselves?
No, they offered these people.
Oh, Meta offered these people.
Meta offered them
Yeah, got it.
$300 million to ditch where they were and come over to Meta. So Alexander Wang is the CEO of Scale AI, and he joined this Meta Superintelligence Labs as the chief AI officer, and he'll lead this. And he also brought in former GitHub CEO Nat Friedman, who will be kind of like his co-lead. And they're going to focus on AI products and applied research for Meta. And it's a list of about maybe 15 or so odd people that he's basically poached and said, hey, yeah, we're going to, give them all the things, all the money, and we're going to have them come in and be our superintelligence team and take over. One of the funny things is, before I get your input on this, is the one of the heads of OpenAI response to this. And, one of the things that stuck out in the article is that he's basically telling the staff, we're going to do everything to keep you. We want you here, and all these, your things to try and get people not to leave. He says, someone has broken into our home. So they're taking it pretty personal that he's come and poached this talent, people who are basically created these models that power OpenAI, power Google. And they're like, yep, that power Claude. Yep, come on over here. We're going to pay you a boatload of money to come over here and create some things for us. We're not going to tell you what those things are, but yeah, we're going to have some fun.
This is probably in response to OpenAI and what's Johnny Ive putting something together, which word on the street, Johnny Ive ain't really all that involved anymore. You got to go do your Googles to figure that one out. But that little, we're teaming up to build this AI thing. I don't know if Johnny Ive is as on board as the initial reports let us out to be, you know. But going fast forward, that's the game, man. People change jobs, and if somebody threw $300 million at me, if Zuckerberg threw $300 million at me, as much crap as we talk about Zuckerberg on this show, I'm taking the money.
What's up, Zuck? What's up, my boy?
Now, what I do while I'm there, I may just coast, like most of these people end up doing. All these people, not all of them, the majority of these executive C-suite people are really just coasting. They're not. I mean, they have direct reports, and then they have direct reports, and then they have direct reports, and then they have direct reports, which are the people who are actually doing the work. When you get all the way up to the totem pole to people getting $300 million a year, I don't know how much they contribute into much of anything, but
I don't know.
Well, I mean, they had teams at Google and these other places. Again, these people are, iconic based on what they've done up to this point. But I don't know if that was all them. It's team effort when it comes to stuff like this. So I'm not putting these people down.
Yeah.
Based on what they've done, apparently, according to Zuckerberg, they are worth $300 million. But I don't know if this is going to move the needle as far as revolutionizing AI. I think these people just jumped in to get a big old check.
Could be, but looking at what some of these people have done, it's co-creators of OCers. Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, this is some pretty heavy duty stuff. And the fact that they've gotten credit for creating it, I'm sure, I wonder if they own, if they were able to patent it. Because I know last company I worked for, some people on my team, some of the work that they did with the models they created, they were able to get on the patent. So I would assume that, the company is an owner in the patent as well as the individuals as well. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what comes out of this. And if these are the people, because like I said, it's about 15 people, just kind of got a rough count. And maybe these are going to be, like you said, they not C-suite people, but they are pretty high up on the tech totem pole. And maybe they'll have all these other scientists and analysts and engineers under them that are creating this stuff. And maybe they just wanted the brain power or the ingenuity of the people who created this stuff or came up with it. And they just say, okay, we're coming up with this, we're going to use these other people to implement it. But to throw that kind of money, well, I would say to throw that kind of money, but Zuck got that money to just throw away. 300 million is nothing for him. So I don't know. It's the girls who they stole these people from are not happy.
That's the game
at all. But yeah, if you can't pay the price, you gotta sit back and let somebody else do it if you can't come up with the money.
And I'm pretty sure OpenAI poached from other places, and all these other places that are upset poached from somebody else. So it's like, what are we talking about here?
Yeah. So it's very interesting to see what's going to come out of this. But he was very pleased with himself for poaching all this talent. And I'm sure some ego stuff in there as well, to be able to kind of, throw your money around and steal these super talented, super smart people. So we'll see what comes out of it. Right, let's head on over to For the Culture, where we talk about what's going on in our culture. When I was doing the show notes for today, I was like, man, I don't know what I'm going to put in here because it's a lot of crap that is going on in these United States of America. Then my text messages started going off, and it said that there is a verdict in the Diddy trial. Yesterday, they weren't a hung jury, but they had 4 of the 5 counts down. One, it was the RICO count that they couldn't agree on. And the judge was like, y'all need to go back and figure it out. So then I was thinking maybe we got at least a few more days from deliberate. First thing this morning at like maybe 9 or 10 o'clock, they're like, okay, we're ready. So everybody knows what this case is. I don't have to rehash that. So he was up for 5 different charges. A RICO charge, which is racketeering, sex trafficking. There were 2 sex trafficking charges, and there were 2 transportation prostitution counts. The first 3, which were the racketeering and the sex trafficking, I think the racketeering is automatic life, and I think the sex ones was like a mandatory, like 20 or 25 years, something along those lines. So those are the 3 biggest ones. Well, the ruling has come back, and he is guilty on 3 of those 5 charges. He's guilty of the lesser charges, which is the transportation of prostitution. And people were like, well, how can he, because I know I was like, how can he get guilty of the transportation but not of the trafficking? Well, because the trafficking were for the 2 female victims, which is Cassie, his former girlfriend, and then Jane Doe, which people have pretty much said is 50 Cent's second baby mama. And the 2 transportation prostitution charges are for bringing the male prostitutes in that he used in these freak-offs. So that's how he was able to, because the trafficking and the prostitution were for 2 different people, for 2 different sets of people. So, he tried to get bail today. The judge denied that. And my thing is, okay, I see you going for it because of the lesser charges, but then he wanted to be able to go to LA. He wants to be able to travel to California. He wants to be able to travel to Miami. He wants to be able to travel to New York. I'm like, dude, you're still guilty of federal charges. They're just not going to give you free reign to like be all willing. Maybe if he just said, I'm just, just let me go to my house in New York and that's it. Maybe, I don't think so, but maybe he would have had a better shot. But for the 2 counts of the that he was charged, that he was found guilty of, they hold a maximum sentence of 10 years per count. So he faces a maximum at this point of 20 years in prison. So there's been a lot of discourse through this whole thing because it's a salacious topic. It involves someone else that is, in the zeitgeist of the community with Cassie and all the things. We saw the video of him, assaulting her in the hotel. And before I get your thoughts, I will just throw up, it's like the Boondocks. It's instead of art, life imitating art, it's art imitating life, because his supporters were outside the courthouse celebrating by spraying each other with baby oil because they found thousands of baby oil bottles in his house during the raids. So these fools are outside the courthouse spraying each other with baby
funny.
oil.
That's funny. That's funny. This is no different than R. Kelly. This is no different than um, no different than what's the guy? Epstein.
Harvey Weinstein. Oh,
Harvey
Epstein.
Weinstein. I said Epstein. No,
Epstein's one
yeah,
too.
both of them, Epstein
Both
and
of
Weinstein.
them. Both the Steens.
I think the goal was to shame Diddy out of relevance,
Mm-hmm.
which I think was the ultimate goal. And to that, mission accomplished. Yes, Diddy has some fans, but so does R. Kelly, so does Epstein, so does Weinstein, so does all these other predators that have
Right.
come before us who of stature, who are celebrities, whatever the case may be. You
Mm-hmm.
know, they're always going to get um, um, what is it with kid gloves? They're going to be treated with kid
Kid
gloves.
Govs. Yeah.
You know, the all of
Preferential
the
treatment.
allegation, right? All
Yeah.
of the allegations are not going to stick.
Yeah.
Looking at this, looking at this without any bias, trying to be objective here. From what I understand of the entire case, the women directly involved and that took much of the brunt of the mistreatment by Diddy, they were, I don't want to say they were, it seems like they were vindicated because of the charges he was found guilty of.
Mm-hmm.
The mistreatment of Cassie and the lady called Jane, and the efforts that he put in to get these strippers or prostitutes or whomever to the hotels or to the locations to do the things to the women, right?
Mm-hmm.
The other stuff, the RICO charges, the gang, the all the Kid Cudi stuff, all
Mm-hmm.
the other surrounding stuff, I think was a play to shame Diddy. And I think it worked because we ain't gonna be checking for Diddy like that anymore. I think the prosecution knew some of the RICO stuff wasn't gonna stick,
Mm-hmm.
but you put it out there
You have
for
to
the sole
throw everything
purpose.
against the wall.
Well, not just that, for the sole purpose of having to then have to delve into that stuff. They have to get all the details of Diddy being crazy and him saying crazy stuff and him doing. You got to
The
dig into that.
videos, they
You got to
watch the
lay it
videos. Yeah.
right. They watch the videos. You got to lay all that stuff out so we can consume it
Yeah.
and then form our court of public opinion, which
Right.
is what most of us did. So I think mission accomplished for that. Outside of, like I was mentioning before, looking at this objectively, I didn't believe that he was going to get found guilty on those RICO charges.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I assumed that the stuff that he did directly to those two young ladies or those
Mm-hmm.
two women and what he was doing with those prostitutes, you know, those male performers, whomever he was paying to do those things. I knew
Mm-hmm.
he was going to get served up with those, but the RICO stuff, well, I think, in my opinion, was a way to shame him. And I think, in my opinion, the three ways to get somebody to either be compliance or to control somebody is fear and shame.
Yeah.
You can either, Diddy was using his fear to keep Cassie and them people under his thumb,
Thumb. Mm-hmm.
and the court used shame to uncover all that. So
Yeah.
those are my thoughts. You know,
Yeah.
it played out how I thought it was going to play out. You know, Diddy's going to, serve harsher in the court of public opinion than he will serving those 5 to 8 years in prison, because that's all he's going to serve, if that much. He
Yeah.
may serve realistically, he may stay in jail for 5 years and then figure
Yeah.
out how to get out on probation and figure out how to get on release or whatever the case may be and move on with his life personally. But publicly, we gonna be riding this dude until the wheels fall off. So
Yeah.
justice is served, if you ask me. I'm pretty sure a different, if you we'll get your input, being a woman, dealing with you watching Cassie and be subjected to that.
Yeah.
It's probably a different response. But to
Mm-hmm.
me, justice is served.
So for me, when they came back and said, we have a decision on all 4 of the 5 counts except for the RICO, in my mind, I was hopeful that, that means because they came back so quickly, they got the 4 guilties on that and not on the RICO. Even though I could see where the prosecution was going with the RICO, I too thought the RICO was going to be hard to make. But with the 2 sex trafficking and coercion charges, and hearing from those women and hearing from other people in how they arranged for those women to be assaulted,
Sure.
I felt I was cautiously optimistic, because like I said, I have seen what people can do and what they
Sure.
can excuse for
Sure.
people who they like. And the jury was made up of 8 men, 4 women. They ranged from like 20 to 50. So in that sweet spot of, you know, knowing him and his music from their college days, from their youth. So it was kind of in like I said, that sweet spot of knowing fully who he was and what he brought to the culture. And I was cautiously optimistic that maybe he'd get convicted on all of them except for the RICO. Right. And the fact that he wasn't convicted based on the testimony of those women who he harmed, to me, they put more harm on the male prostitutes than the actual women who were victimized. And that is where, for me, it said 2 things. One, people don't understand consent. Yes, they were partners of his, but you don't get blanket consent to have intercourse or group sex or orgies or whatever the case may be with a person. You have to get consent every time. And what it felt like, the difference between the R. Kelly and Diddy, is that R. Kelly's crimes were against children, and Diddy's crimes that we know of, in this case, were against adults. 19 is still an adult, even though it's barely, but it was still an adult. And people, I don't think, could separate the fact that, oh, well, why can't you just leave? Even though they heard all the coercion and all the things that he did to these women to keep them under his thumb, I don't think they were able to separate it. And while Diddy is free of those charges, for me, the bigger thing is, one, they tell women when you're assaulted, when you're harmed, to go to the police. Don't just file civilly for money. Go to police and get them in jail. We see what happens when women do that. They aren't believed. So that's one. 2 is that people aren't able to separate what a person has done with what their perception of them is. And what this means is, yes, Diddy, the entity, the person, he did these things, they said these things, and whatever. He's free because he has that privilege. But the other thing is, it shows people, especially for those who are celebrating this as quote unquote a win, is that if they are harmed, if this guy or this girl is out there celebrating this, a person who has been assaulted, maybe by someone that they know, they won't feel protected going to these people because they've already seen that they're okay with certain levels of harm. And you don't, it's more harmful to people in your everyday lives rather than this whole, the entity, the whole thing of a celebrity. It drills down to people's everyday lives where they don't feel safe, or they won't feel safe to go into the police, or they won't feel safe of talking to a family member, reaching out to a family member if they're in a domestic abuse situation. So that's, for me, that's the shame in all of this, is that 1, women aren't believed, and 2, the people who are around you, who are in your everyday life, who may be subjected to this type of violence, they don't have people they would be able to trust to go to for help, because people have shown, the courts have shown that, no one will believe you, even though there's the proof there that shows that even if the proof wasn't there, your word isn't enough. it's a quote unquote he said, she said. So to me, that's the really sad part of this. And the fact that he is a narcissist, he is an egomaniac, and him getting off of these charges is one of those things where I think it's going to embolden him to be even more of a horrible person. I think once he's free, I think he may do 5 or 6 years. And with federal time, you have to do whatever your sentence, you have to do it unless you're given a pardon. But 5 or 6 years is not a lot of time for you to quote unquote feel safe, because we've seen that when someone goes against him, he retaliates. So once he gets out of jail, they can't try him again for this. So now these women,
if you have new cases against different people,
if it's new cases, but I'm saying for the people, the 2 women that were in this case.
Yeah.
So, it's one of those things where you're always kind of looking over your shoulder, because now this person has done their time. They've basically, according to the courts, they've atoned for their sins. So now they're free as a bird to come back out. And now you're petrified because now this known vindictive person is out and about, and, you could look up at any time, because he'll be free to travel and roam wherever he wants to show up. So that's what it is for me, is these women who've come out against him aren't going to feel safe.
Well, let me ask, with these and all other cases, did you believe this was going to be different?
Honestly, no.
Okay.
I hoped it was, but I've been a woman my whole life. So I know how women are treated, can be treated, how women cannot be believed, especially when it comes to Black men, because it's the thing of, we got to protect the Black man because, life has done them so bad, and which is true. But Black women are there too. Black women have been done bad and mistreated, but they don't get that same sort of protection from the quote unquote community. And especially since he's very wealthy, he's done philanthropic things. So people are clinging to the positives. I honestly think he is going to go on a rehabilitation tour. I think the difference with Bill Cosby, he was convicted of those things. Since he got off from those things, of course,
well, he got
people
off
aren't going to want to.
He got off for the RICO thing, but he
the
was
RICO
still
and the sex trafficking. He got off for the sex trafficking too.
Right, but he was still convicted of prostitution and the other things. I can't think what the other
it was
things are.
Transportation of prostitution. So it was basically taking prostitutes from whatever. Yeah. So yeah, he still has some stink on him. Only time will tell how long it will be. I don't think people want to deal with him.
No.
Especially out front. No. They may want to deal with him in cloak and dagger.
Yeah, I don't know. Same way people don't mess with Bill Cosby. Same way people don't mess with R. Kelly. Diddy's going to get in that same bucket to where we're going to roast and shame them for the rest of their lives. Again, that is not compensatory to the things he did to them women and to them people in general. But we're going to throw that dude away. And that may be tough for him. That may be
tougher.
Right. Than just being free. Right.
Yeah.
To where everywhere he go, anytime he show up at a appearance, and this is talking after he's served his time, right?
Yeah.
Anytime he shows up for an interview or writes a book or whatever, we're gonna clown this dude.
Yeah.
I hope so.
Again, like I said, when you asked me the question if I thought it was gonna be different, and I said no, but I hope so. After what I've seen with this case, after what I've seen with what's going on in this country, with what people are willing to forgive and accept or pretend doesn't exist, I don't have much confidence in that. I don't have much confidence. There are people who, when he was on trial and saw these things, they were like, man, let that man out.
There's always going to be those people. There's always going to be free Tory Lanes. There's always going to be those people.
Yeah. So I just, I don't know. I don't know if time will allow him some sort of visibility at, re-entry. I hope not, but I can't say for sure that it will, because at this point I don't really trust any of it, because it's not good. It's not good. So I'm sure in the coming days, we'll get, now that he's been convicted, I can see where they're going to try and go ahead and where they would want to go ahead and rush the sentencing, especially since he can't get out, to go ahead and get the sentencing decisions so he can start doing that and plan his next thing. So, the charges are a max of 10 years each. So we'll see. He may get 2.5 for each one, maybe. So maybe 5 years. I hope they give him the max, but I don't have a lot of confidence in any of this right now, seeing how this has played out. So another day of being in this country and not having women believed. It gets exhausting and tiring. On to the next thing, which is the hookup for our tech tip of the week.
My hookup was going to be check out the Apple Music replay all time, but we already talked about that. So I'll just do a reiterate. Apple Music, in celebration of its 10-year anniversary, has put out this playlist of your top songs over the past 10 years. And it'll show up if you open up the music app, tap the home button or the home tab. It'll be right there. It'll say replay all time. You can listen to the music. You can also add it to your library, or you can add it to another playlist. So that's my hookup for the week. If you are Apple Music subscriber, check out your top music over the past 10 years that you've listened to, and see if you agree or not.
All right. And with that being said, that's going to wrap up the show for this week. Brother Tech, where can the people find you?
Sure, you can find me all over the internet at Brother Tech. That's BROTHATECH.
And you can find me at Tech Savvy Diva everywhere. And if you have a chance, I was on DTNS on Tuesday, and we got to see a real live test drive of some AR VR glasses. That was actually pretty cool. So if you have some time, check that out. And with that, we're going to wrap it up. Again, to connect, to comment, to share, to support our show, head on over to snubblescast.com to get all those details. And with that, we will see you all next week.
Peace.
Bye, everybody.